Today I am going to discuss about dietary guidelines. Make every bite count with the dietary guidelines. Here's how. Follow a healthy dietary pattern at every life stage. At every life stage, infancy, toddlers, childhood, adolescence, adulthood, pregnancy, lactation, and older adulthood. It is never too early or too late to eat healthfully. For about the first 6 months of life, exclusively feed infants human milk. Continue to feed infants human milk through at least the first years of life and longer if desired. Feed infants iron fortified infant formula during the first year of life when human milk is unavailable. Provide infants with supplemental vitamin D beginning soon after birth. At about 6 months, introduce infants to nutrient dense complementary foods. Introduce infants to potentially allergenic foods along with other complementary foods. Encourage infants and toddlers to consume a variety of foods from all food groups. Include food rich in iron and zinc, particularly for infants fed human milk, from 12 months through older adulthood. Follow a healthy dietary pattern across the lifespan to meet nutrient needs. Help achieve a healthy body weight and reduce the risk of chronic diseases. Customize and enjoy nutrient-dense food and beverages. Choices to reflect personal preferences, cultural traditions, and budgetary considerations. A healthy dietary pattern can benefit all individuals regardless of age, race, or ethnicity, or current health status. The Dietary Guidelines provides a framework intended to be customized to individual needs and preferences. Focus on meeting food group needs with nutrient-dense foods and beverages, and stay within calorie limits. An underlying premise of the dietary guidelines is that nutritional needs should be met primarily from foods and beverages, specifically nutrient-dense foods and beverages. Nutrient-dense foods provide vitamins, minerals, and other health-promoting components and have no or little added sugars, saturated fat, and sodium. A healthy dietary pattern consists of nutrient-dense forms of food and beverages across all food groups in recommended amount and within calorie limits. The core elements that make up a healthy diet pattern include vegetables of all types, dark green, red and oranges, peas, beans and lentils, starchy and other vegetables. Fruit include whole fruit, grains at least half of which are whole grain. Dairy including fat-free or low-fat milk, yogurt and cheese, or lactose-free virgin and fortified soy beverages and yogurt as alternatives. Protein foods including lean meats, poultry, eggs, seafood, peas, beans and lentils, and nuts, seeds and soy products. Oil including vegetable oils and oils in food such as seafood and nuts. Limits foods and beverages higher in added sugars, saturated fat, and sodium, and limit alcoholic beverages. At every life stage, meeting food group recommendations, even with nutrient-dense choices, requires most of the person's daily calorie needs and sodium limits. A healthy dietary pattern does not have much room for extra added sugars, saturated fat, or sodium, or for alcoholic beverages. A small amount of added sugars, saturated fat, or sodium can be added to nutrient-dense foods and beverages to help meet food group recommendations. But foods and beverages high in these components should be limited. Limits are added sugar. Added sugar should be less than 10% of calories per day, starting at age 2. Avoid foods and beverages with added sugars for those younger than age 2. Saturated fat should be less than 10% of calories per day starting at age 2. Sodium should be less than 2300 mg per day and even less for children younger than age 14. Alcoholic beverages, adults of legal drinking age can choose not to drink or to drink in moderation by limiting intake to 2 drinks or less in a day for men and 1 drink or less in a day for women. A fundamental premise of the dietary guidelines is that almost everyone, no matter an individual's age, race, ethnicity, or health status, can benefit from shifting food and beverages choices to better support healthy dietary patterns. Healthy eating starts at birth with the exclusive consumption of human milk, if possible, for about the first 6 months. If human milk is unavailable, infants should be fed an iron-fortified commercial infant formula regulated by the Food and Drug Administration, which are based on standards that ensure nutrient content and safety. Healthy eating continues with the introduction of complementary foods and beverages at about 6 months of age. By 12 months, infants should maintain their healthy eating as they transition to developmentally appropriate foods and beverages. Healthy eating continues in each life stage thereafter, even though nutrients needs vary across life stages. The food and beverages that includes should eat over the lifespan are remarkably consistent. Over the course of any given day, week, or year, individuals consume foods and beverages in combination, a dietary pattern. A dietary pattern represents the totality of what individuals habitually eat and drink, and the parts of the pattern act synergistically to affect health. As a result, the dietary pattern may better predict overall health status and disease risk than individual food or nutrients. A healthy dietary patterns consist of nutrient-dense forms of foods and beverages across all food groups in recommended amounts and within calorie limits. Achieving a healthy dietary pattern at each life stage not only supports health at that point in time, but also supports health in the next life stage and possibly for future generations. If healthy dietary patterns can be established early in life and sustained thereafter, the impact on health could be significant. Establishing and maintaining a healthy dietary pattern can help minimizing the diet-related chronic diseases. Consuming foods and beverages that are not nutrient-dense may lead to disease expression in later years. High intakes of such foods and unhealthy dietary pattern throughout the lifespan can increase the risk of developing chronic diseases. The good news is that at any stage of life, individuals can make effort to adopt a healthy dietary pattern and improve their health. And dietary pattern provides a framework for healthy eating that any individual can follow. It is based on the types and proportion of foods of all ages, gender, races, and ethnicities typically consumed, but in nutrient-dense forms and appropriate amounts. In this picture, dietary patterns demonstrate at the 2000 calorie level daily or weekly amounts from food groups, subgroups, and components. Foods are assumed to be in nutrient-dense form, lean or low-fat and prepared with minimal added sugars, refined starches, saturated fat, or sodium. If all food choices to meet food group recommendations are in nutrient-dense form, a small number of calories remain within the overall limit of the pattern. The amount of calories depends on the total calorie level of the pattern and the amounts of the food from each food group required to meet nutritional goals. Calories up to the specified limit can be used for added sugars, saturated fat, or to eat more than the recommended amount of food in a food group. Food group amounts shown in cup or ounces equivalents. Oils are shown in grams. Amounts will vary for those who need less than 2000 or greater than 2000 calories per day. Here you can see a demonstration which depicts the calories in food choices, foods that are not nutrient dense, and calories in nutrient dense forms of these food. Blue color bar represents calories in nutrient dense form of the food, and orange color bar represents additional calories in food as consumed. Every food and beverages choice is an opportunity to move toward a healthy dietary pattern. Small changes in single choices end up and can make a big differences. These are the few examples of realistic small changes to nutrient-dense choices that can help people adopt healthy dietary patterns. Science is the foundation of the dietary guidelines, recommendations on what individuals should eat and drink to promote health, reduce risk of chronic disease, and meet nutrient needs. The science shows that consuming a healthy dietary pattern meeting food group and nutrient needs with nutrient-dense foods and beverages, and limiting intake of foods and beverages that are not nutrient-dense is related to many health benefits. Science also supports the idea that every life stage provides an opportunity to make food choices that promote health and well-being, achieve and maintain appropriate weight status, and reduce risk of diet-related chronic diseases. Evidence on the associated between dietary patterns and reduced risk of diet-related chronic diseases has expanded in recent years and supports the use of dietary patterns as a foundation for the recommendations in the dietary guidelines. Consistent evidence demonstrates that a healthy dietary pattern is associated with beneficial outcomes for all-cause mortality, cardiovascular disease, overweight, obesity, type 2 diabetes, bone health, and certain types of cancer. Common characteristics of dietary patterns associated with positive health outcomes include relatively higher intake of vegetable, fruit, legumes, and whole grains, low or no fat dairy, lean meats and poultry, seafoods, nuts, and unsaturated vegetables oil, and relatively lower consumption of red and processed meats, sugar sweetened foods and beverages, and refined grains. The evidence examined showed broad representation across a number of population and demographic groups. This suggests a consistent association, no matter the region or the culture context, in which a healthy dietary pattern is consumed. Dietary pattern characterized by higher intake of red and processed meats, sugar-sweetened food and beverages, and refined grains, and associated with detrimental health outcomes. The total number of calories a person needs each day varies depending on a number of factors: person's age, gender, height, weight, level of physical activity, and pregnancy or lactation status. Due to reductions in basic metabolic rate that occurs with aging, calorie needs generally decrease for adults as they age. Our need to lose, maintain, or gain weight affects how many calories should be consumed. This picture demonstrates that healthy eating across the lifespan can promote health and reduce the risk of chronic diseases. The 2020 Dietary Guidelines Advisory Committee examined the evidence on diet and health across the lifespan. Evidence is not available for all combinations of exposures and outcomes for the population subgroups presented in this figure. The committee rated the evidence on diet and health as strong, moderate, limited, or grade not assignable. Only outcomes with strong or moderate evidence are included in this table. To help people meet the guidelines and key recommendations, important principles when making decisions about nutrient-dense foods and beverages, choices to achieve a healthy dietary patterns. The dietary guidelines are designed to meet the recommended dietary allowances and adequate intakes of essential nutrients. as well as acceptable macronutrient distribution ranges. An underlying premises of the dietary guidelines is that nutritional needs should be met primarily from foods and beverages. Nutrient-dense foods and beverages when meeting nutrient needs is not otherwise possible. Fortified foods and nutrient-containing dietary supplements are useful. It is important to note that the nutrient density and healthfulness of what people eat and drink often is determined ultimately by how a food item, dish, or meal is prepared at home and away from the home or produced by a manufacturer. Enjoy always different foods and beverages within each food group. This can help meet nutrient needs and also allows for flexibility so that the dietary guidelines can be tailored to meet cultural and personal preferences. All forms of foods, including fresh, canned, dried, frozen, and 100% juices, in nutrient dense forms, can be included in healthy dietary patterns. Portion sizes is a term often used to describe the amount of a food or beverages served or consumed in one eating occasion. It is important to pay attention to portion size when making food and beverages choice, particularly for food and beverages that are not nutrient dense. A concept that can help people choose appropriate portion is serving size. This term is included on the nutritional fact label and refers to the amount of a food or beverages that is customarily consumed. It is not a recommendation of how much to eat or drink. Consuming less than the stated serving size results in consuming fewer calories and other nutrients of food components. Some products may have multiple serving per package. Typical dietary patterns currently consumed by many in the United States do not align with the dietary guidelines. The Healthy Eating Index is a measure of diet quality that can be used to assess compliance with the dietary guidelines for Americans ages 2 and older. Healthy Eating Index 2015 scores indicates that intakes are not consistent with recommendations for a healthy dietary patterns. Average diet quality has slightly improved in the past 10 years, but the average score of 59 on a scale from 0 to 100 indicates that people that have much room for improvements. Differences in overall healthy eating index scores are seen across age, gender, race, and income subgroups, and by pregnancy and lactation status. Though poor diet quality is observed across all groups, with each step closer to the diet that aligns with the core elements of the healthy dietary patterns, healthy eating index score will increase and risk for chronic diseases will decrease. Eating should be enjoyed, and a healthy dietary pattern can be enjoyable from early life to older adulthood. The science reviewed to inform the dietary guidelines represents the diversity, including all ages and life stages, different racial and ethnic backgrounds, and a range of socio-economic status. A healthy dietary patterns can benefit all individuals, regardless of age, race, or current health status. The dietary guidelines provide a framework intended to be customized to fit individual household and federal program participants' preferences, as well as the foodways of the diverse cultures. The Dietary Guidelines framework purposely provides recommendations by food groups and subgroups, not specific foods and beverages to avoid being prescriptive. Exposure to the different types of food is important early in life to better develop a child's interest and willingness to eat and enjoy a variety of foods. Through each life stage that follows a key starting point for establishing and maintaining a healthy dietary pattern is to ensure that individuals' or family preferences in nutrient-dense forms are built into day-to-day choices. Cultural backgrounds can have significant influences on the food and beverages choices. Customize the dietary guidelines framework to reflect specific cultures and traditions is an important strategy to help communities across the country eat and enjoy a healthy dietary patterns. Nutrient-dense, culturally relevant foods and beverages are part of all of the food groups. Spices and herbs can help flavor foods when reducing the added sugars, saturated fat, and sodium, and they also can add to the enjoyment of nutrient-dense foods, dishes, and meals that reflect specific cultures. Relying on the expertise of professionals in nutrition and in specific cultural foodways can help people prepare foods healthful and while retaining heritage. Despite a common perception that eating healthfully is expensive, a healthy dietary pattern can be affordable and fit within budgetary constraints. There are a range of strategies that can be used to help individuals and families follow a healthy dietary patterns, including advanced planning, considering regional and seasonal food availability, and incorporating a variety of fresh, frozen, dried, and canned options. The dietary guidelines approach for providing a framework ensures that its recommendations can meet people where they are, from personal preferences to cultural foodways, and including budgetary consideration. Always use vegetables, dark green vegetables, which includes fresh, frozen, and canned dark green leafy vegetables, and broccoli, cooked or raw. For example, broccoli, mustard greens, spinach, and turnip green. Red and orange vegetables include all fresh, frozen, and canned red and orange vegetables or juice, cooked or raw. For example, red or orange bell peppers, sweet potatoes, tomatoes, 100% tomato juice, and winter squashes. Beans, peas, and lentils include all cooked from dry or canned beans, peas, chickpeas, and lentils. For example, black beans, black-eyed beans, chickpeas, kidney beans, lentils, mung beans, pigeon beans, pinto beans, and split beans. Does not include green beans or green peas. Starchy vegetables include all fresh, frozen, and canned starchy vegetables. For example, plantains, white potato, water chestnut, yam. All fresh fruits, frozen, canned, and dried fruits, and 100% fruit juices, for example, Asian pears, apples, bananas, berries, which include blackberries, blueberries, kiwi fruit, mulberries, raspberries, and strawberries. Citrus fruit, which include grapefruit, lemons, lime, oranges, cherries, dates, figs, grapes, guava, mangoes, and melons. Plums, raisins, pears, peaches, papaya, and grains include whole grain. All whole grains product and whole grains used as ingredient, for example, barley, brown rice, buckwheat, millet, oats, popcorn, whole grain cereals, crackers, and rice. Refined grains include products and refined grains used as ingredient, for example, white breads, refined grain cereals, crackers, ice cream, cream of wheat, barley, pasta, and white rice. Refined grain choices should be enriched. Dry and fortified soy alternatives include all fluid, dry, or evaporated milk, include lactose-free and lactose-reduced products, and fortified soy beverages, buttermilk, yogurt, frozen yogurt, cheese, and dairy desserts. Most choices should be fat-free or low-free cream, sour cream, cream cheese are not included due to their low calcium content. Protein foods include meats, poultry, eggs. Meats include beef, lamb. Poultry includes chicken, duck, ostrich. Organ meats include liver, tongue. Eggs include chicken eggs and other birds' egg. Meats and poultry should be lean or low fat. Seafoods examples Seafood examples that are lower in methyl mercury include catfish, crab, herring, lobster, oyster, salmon, tuna, shrimp, and nuts and seeds. Soy products include all nuts and seeds, and seed butters, which include sesame or tahini or sunflower. Soy includes tofu and products made from soy flour, soy protein isolate, and soy concentrate. Nuts should be unsalted. Dietary guidelines include recommendations for food groups, vegetables, fruits, grains, dairy, and protein foods, eaten at an appropriate calorie level and in forms with limited amounts of added sugars, saturated fat, and sodium. Science shows that these same core elements of a healthy dietary patterns are consistent across each life stages. More than 80% Individuals have dietary patterns that are low in vegetables, fruit, and dairy. More than half of the population is meeting or exceeding total grain and total protein foods recommendations but are not meeting the recommendations for the subgroups within each of these food groups. Current inadequate intake of nutrient-dense foods and beverages across food groups has resulted in underconsumption of some nutrients and dietary components. Calcium, potassium, dietary fiber, and vitamin D are considered dietary components of public health concerns for the general population because low intakes are associated with health concerns. If a healthy dietary pattern is consumed, amounts of calcium, potassium, and dietary fiber can meet recommendations. Individuals should be encouraged to make shifts to increase the intakes of vegetables, fruits, beans, whole grains, and dairy, to move intakes of these underconsumed dietary components closer to the recommendations. Fortified foods and dietary supplements may be useful in providing one or more nutrients that may be consumed is less than recommended amounts. Vitamin D recommendations are harder to achieve through natural sources from diet alone and would require consuming food and beverages fortified with vitamin D. Taking a vitamin D supplement may be appropriate when sunlight exposure is limited due to climate or the use of sunscreen. A healthy dietary pattern is designed to meet food group and nutrient recommendations while staying within caloric needs. A healthy dietary pattern is designed to not exceed the tolerable upper intake level or chronic disease risk reduction level for nutrients. To achieve these goals, the pattern is based on consuming foods and beverages in their nutrient-dense forms with the least amounts of added sugars, saturated fat, and sodium. Most of the calories a person needs to eat each day, around 85%, are needed to meet food groups recommendations healthfully in nutrient-dense forms. The remaining calories, around 15%, are calories available for other uses, including for added sugars or saturated fat beyond the small amounts found in nutrient-dense forms of food and beverages within the pattern. To consume more than the recommended amount of a food group, this equates to 250 to 350 remaining calories for calorie patterns appropriate for most of the population. This picture demonstrates total calories per day needed to meet the needs with nutrient-dense choices. Slight changes to individual parts of a meal can make a big differences. This meal shows example of small shifts to more nutrient-dense choices that significantly improve the nutritional profile of the meal overall while delivering on taste and satisfaction. Small changes to more nutrient-dense single food and beverages choices when combined, become a nutrient-dense meal, can lead to a whole day made up of nutrient-dense meals and snacks. I am giving you an example which comes in under 200 calories, shows how people can make thoughtful choices that meet their food group needs, stay within limits, and importantly, that they can enjoy. In the breakfast, total calories are 375. Banana, walnut, overnight oats contain 350 calories, and 1 cup of coffee contain 25 calories. And in lunch, total calories are 715. Chicken bowl contain 710 calories, and lettuce contain 5 calories, which are 16 ounces in sizes. The nutrient density and the healthfulness of what people eat and drink often is determined ultimately by how a food item, dish, or meal is prepared at home and away from home or produced by a manufacturer. In the dinner, total calories are 585. Vegetables contain 500 calories. One medium orange contains 75 calories. And in the snacks, total calories are 300. Popcorn contains 60 calories. Yogurt and peaches contain 250, roundabout 250 calories. Total calories for the day are 2000 kilocalories per day. As such, a nutrient-dense diet, where most nutritional needs are met by 85% of the calories consumed, offers a small amount of minimal amounts of added sugars or saturated fat to the diet. One way to use remaining calories is to add small amounts of added sugar or saturated fat to some nutrient-dense foods to make some foods more palatable while working towards meeting food groups recommendation. For example, oatmeal with a small amount of brown sugar or vegetables prepared with small amount of butter. To achieve a healthy dietary patterns, all food group recommendations should be met with foods and beverages that are in nutrient-dense forms. A healthy dietary pattern has little room available for foods and beverages high in added sugars, saturated fats, and sodium. Intakes of foods and beverages high in these components should be limited. These foods and beverages should be occasional choices consumed in small portions, while intakes of added sugars, saturated fat, and sodium should be limited. The guidance is intended to allow the programs and individual to have some flexibility to choose a healthy dietary patterns within calories limits that fits personal preferences and color traditions and allows day-to-day flexibility to support a healthy dietary pattern over time. If alcoholic beverages are consumed, intakes should be within the limits and calories should be accounted for to keep total calorie intake at an appropriate level.